Please welcome Grace, everybody. So I think this part will be more interactive. We'll have a conversation.
Okay, great. It's great to be here. Great to be here and interview you so we can all get to know you better. My kids are quite impressed that I am going to lead a discussion with you. So the first question, I'll begin as if we don't know you. Okay, so how did you get into comedy first?
I got into comedy the way pretty much every comedian gets into it. When I was watching somebody else do it, and it was pretty bad. And I was like, I could do this easily. That is literally like 99% of comedians in the world. That's how they get into it. They go watch somebody and they're like, I think I could do this stuff. That's how it was. So I started doing it like, I think, 10 years ago. And here we are.
Okay, great. And what were you doing before? Like, did you have another profession?
Yeah, I'm in Luxembourg, so take a guess. I work for a bank. Actually, I was working for a bank right until last week. I just quit my job last week, so that thank you, sir. So that I can do this full time now. I can get cancelled all the time now, so it'll be fun. So I was working for a bank for I think 15 years now.
And so, when you were doing stand-up, what topics were you, when you started off in comedy, what topics were you talking about?
So I was mostly talking about my own life. That's I was doing storytelling about how I grew up, how I moved to Luxembourg, and how I met my wife, my kids, everything. And it was completely different from what I do now. I was never talking about politics at all. In fact, I didn't even know what was happening in the world. Like when I said I didn't know about Palestine till 2 years ago, that's true. I did not know what was happening in the Middle East at all. So I was sticking to what I know, which was just me. And and then it kind of evolved into what we do now.
Okay. So like you, I didn't know much about Palestine except what the American media was feeding us, the world media, I guess.
Bullshit.
Yeah, and even when I visited Israel, my Israeli friends were saying don't go to Gaza or West Bank because it's dangerous and you can get hurt. And so I just stayed in Israel. And then October 7th happened, and I think it just kind of changed the world view on the conflict. And so is that what triggered your kind of swivel into tackling political issues and topics?
Yeah, I think it happened with almost everybody in this room. Probably everybody I know. 2.5 years ago, the whole world changed for everybody, right? Like most people, I don't know, if you're not from the Middle East, we didn't know what was happening in the Middle East. And I think 2.5 years ago, like, it was like the Matrix red pill, blue pill thing, you know? We all got the red pill. We didn't ask for it. But everybody suddenly woke up and they're like, oh, what we've been told for all these years is kind of bullshit. And then we started to, I basically, personally, I started to look into what was happening. And I was like, I need to talk about this stuff.
How come? Why did you feel this need to talk about it?
Because I think everybody needs an outlet, right? When something happens, you get angry, you want to shout. When you get sad, you want to cry. For me, it was like, I need an outlet for me. So it was very, very, very selfish. I was like, I just need to do it. I was not aware that there were people out there who wanted to hear the same stuff. So I was just like, I have a phone, I'll make a video, I'll put it online, and I'll say the wildest stuff that I can think of. What's going to happen? You know? So I just started doing that from my own point of view, like, I hate these guys, it doesn't make any sense. And I was just starting to question everything. And that's how I started, you know.
Okay, and so just because it's a controversial thing to criticize Israel and what's happening in Gaza, did it make you nervous to put that on this public platform of yours?
Yeah, it did, and it's it's completely contrary to what everybody told me. Literally everybody told me, don't do this because it will ruin your career. And I was like, what career? Nobody knows me, you know. But I think they meant that my banking career would be over, which is fine. But yeah, I think a lot of celebrities that you see nowadays who are afraid to speak on the topic, they're afraid because they will lose their livelihood. I had nothing to lose. I was like, what's the worst that can happen, you know? So I was just like, I keep doing this stuff. And I thought it could help some people as well. I later, like 6 months into it, I found out people were writing to me, telling me it helps them when they watch my videos. Or whatever I say, they can then use the same arguments in debates and stuff. So I'm like, okay, I can keep doing this stuff, you know? So.
Okay, and have you had a lot of surprise, positive feedback from people?
Oh, unbelievable. Yeah. Unbelievable, yeah.
Was there anything that surprised you?
Yeah, I was very surprised because, you know, I don't spend a lot of, it's unbelievable, but I don't spend a lot of time on my phone. You know, I make the video and I put my phone away because I don't want to be stuck to the phone, and I have very bad eyesight as well, so I can't read properly. So I was trying not to be on there. And I didn't know that so many people were watching my videos. Like for a month or so, I didn't know that like my video had gone viral on Twitter, for example, because I don't have a Twitter account. So somebody had taken the first video. The first video that I had made was when I said, you know, I was thinking of putting a Palestinian flag outside my house, but I got scared because if I put a Palestinian flag outside my house, it means that my house was promised to an Israeli. And it went viral on Twitter and everything, like millions of views. I didn't know, somebody had posted it. And somebody from my office contacted me saying, hey, I saw you on Twitter. I was like, I'm not on Twitter. They were like, yeah, you are. You know, so they all found out. And it took me a while to find out that there was so much of reach there, which shows that the old world has changed. You know, comedians, you need a manager, you need an agent, you need an agency to promote you and stuff. Now you just have a phone and the internet, and if you're good enough, it'll reach people. So I found out from other people that it made an impact in other people's lives. The reach was there.
So, like, criticizing the Israeli government is a little taboo, and so when it comes from a comedian, it's a little safer to do, and so maybe people feel better hearing it coming from a comedian. And do you feel there's some limits to what you can tackle, and do you like filter yourself? Yeah. So the first point, of course, it's better for people to hear it from a comedian sometimes because I know it from my ex-wife's personal experience because she's just scrolling on Instagram and TikTok, and it's just people dying all the time, you know. At some point you're just like, I can't look at stuff anymore. And then you see a funnier version of the same thing, somebody's criticizing and calling out something, and then you're like, I can watch this, you know. So you can get a point across in a funny way, I found that out. And in terms of limits, now there are limits. I think 2 years ago there were no limits. Now with TikTok being bought by Larry Ellison, with Instagram, Meta completely censoring everything that you say, I had to find the right formula for my videos not to get banned. So I found out the right way to do it. In the last year, not a single video has been blocked or banned. So I think I'm pretty good at it now. Yeah, but thank you. It's crazy that before you had more freedom of speech than now. Like we used to think the opposite, like we didn't have so much freedom before, but you were allowed to say whatever you wanted before. Now you just have to be careful. People are not saying Israel anymore. You have to say some code words. You can't say genocide anymore. You have to put a 0 instead of an O. All kinds of shit. It's like, yeah, it's like a puzzle out there. So you have to navigate it like the floor is lava or something like that, you know. So it's crazy, yeah. And I noticed that you also started making other videos about criticizing Luxembourg for creating business ties with Israel, or Germany condoning it. So now you've gotten kind of into this whole political spectrum. So do you feel like you can have more power to sway politicians once you pressure them through your reach?
Yeah, I think my point of view was to just put information out there so people know, and then they know what to do with that information. Like the Post was giving out modems that were manufactured and controlled in Israel. And I made a post about it because somebody wrote to me and told me, please let everybody know that this is what's happening. So I put it out there, and same with like Luxembourg. In the initial stages, I never made any videos about Luxembourg because I thought nobody knows of this country, you know? Which is kind of true, nobody knows about Luxembourg. I didn't know about this place when I came here. And I was like, it's no point me talking about like a small country, it has no impact on the rest of the world, but I found out that it does have a lot of impact. So I was like, okay, we gotta talk about this because the financial world, I worked in a bank, so I now know how much banks and the banking system controls the entire everything, you know? Like the SWIFT network from the banks is controlled by the US. So when the US says we are going to sanction the International Criminal Court and its judges because they issued arrest warrants against Netanyahu, the SWIFT network is the one that will allow all the banks to stop payments, and their bank accounts are all blocked because of it being controlled by the US. So I'm like, oh, Luxembourg is pretty central to maintaining control over the US sanctions policy all over the world. So I was like, okay, now I think I need to talk about Luxembourg. Yeah. It's gonna get bad, but what's the worst that can happen?
So what do you hope to achieve by creating awareness of these things?
What do I hope to achieve from awareness? Hopefully change. Yeah. You know, I think the more people who know about it, some people go out and protest, some people go out and they have contacts in the ministry, some people know other people who can make an impact. The more it is known, the better. So I think Luxembourg Times 2 weeks ago had an article saying that the Spoorkies closed down the accounts of the ICJ last year. We didn't know about it until 2 weeks ago. So I just found out and I was like, how do we not know this stuff? So I said, okay, people probably haven't heard of this either, so I made a video about that. So hopefully at least another 10,000 people know about it. So they can go to Spoorkies and be like, what the hell are you guys doing?
Yeah. So do you feel that now you're a comedian and you're also a journalist, you're like spreading information? And
like Noam was saying, you know, nowadays people laugh at politicians and they listen to comedians, which is crazy. Nobody should be listening to me. This is bullshit. This is just crazy. And here we are, I'm like, oh yeah, this is so stupid. But yeah, this is the world we are in now. Yeah.
So now that it's changing in that direction, do you feel this like a social responsibility to tackle these types of topics?
I feel it myself because of all the pressure that my followers are putting on me. Yeah. So of course every day I get like hundreds, thousands, sometimes messages from people saying talk about this, talk about that, talk about Iran, talk about the Epstein files. I'm like, dude, this will take me a team of 10 people to research everything because before I say anything I have to fact check everything. So I'm just on my computer like I'm checking the history of Zionism, I'm checking the history of Christian Zionism. Like what is that? Like it's crazy. So I'm checking the banking regulations from the CSSF, what's happening over there. And so I think at some point of time I will need like a team of people who can fact check everything before I say it because people are like, hey, you said something wrong that day. Like I made a video about the Teva pharmaceuticals from Israel and they basically have had to pay, I think, over $1 billion worth of fines over the last 10 years in the US and in EU. And I was talking about them saying that these people should be boycotted because then they you can go for the alternatives. But in that video, I made a mistake, like by saying that you can buy this one instead of this one. And I immediately got like emails and messages from people saying, you should correct that mistake, go in the caption, make that. I was like, okay, I'll do it.
Okay. Yeah. And so have you ever been reported, because you have a huge platform and you're...
Let me ask you, have you been reported?
Yeah.
You have, right?
Yeah, I had fact check some information, like you said. That's what reminded me of this. So before I post something on my Instagram stories, especially if it's controversial, like I fact check it. And so I posted some things about Israel's skin banks and the harvesting of organs, and then I got accused of anti-Semitism, and I was called to the anti-terrorist unit in the police department, and I did feel good. Actually, we got the police report on Thanksgiving Day, and I'm like preparing food, and my husband's like, "Oh, great,"
Thanks.
and I'm like, "Yeah, oh, great," because if those police officers who are going to interview me don't know about this, what an opportunity. I'll have a small audience, like a police officer and a translator, and I can share this information with them, and even just teach them about the atrocities that are going on. And so for me, I had an audience of 3, and I felt so good about it. And so you having like this 600,000.
I got called to the police as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was last month at the police station, and somebody had taken a Facebook post that I had made where I said that Israel is a terrorist organization. I said the most generous way of describing Israel is that it's a settler colonial apartheid regime of terrorists. Just, you know what I do. So I posted that, and then somebody put it on bsecure.lu or whatever, and the police called me, and we had an interview. It was 3 hours.
Me too.
Because you need a translator. It's Luxembourg, right? So I have a French translator, and this Luxembourgish guy is asking me, "So did you make this post?" And then she says, "Did you make this post?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I did make this post." And she goes like, "Yes." And now that guy has to then translate it to German because all the typing is done in German. I'm like, this is like how you can best describe Luxembourg. 3 hours for like a 5-minute conversation. Like, oh, what language?
And so, how do you feel worried about these if they keep coming?
No, I was actually hoping that it would get escalated to the courts very quickly, but it's going to take a few months, I think. I'm hoping that it will become a national controversy or something, so that then we can talk about it at a high level where everybody will know about it. Because I think this is the problem, that all the cancellations, all the controversial discussions are all squashed at a very low level where nobody knows that it's happening. So I was like, I told the policeman, I was like, I hope that they take me to court, I'll get a bunch of lawyers, we'll discuss it at a level where every newspaper is going to print it. So I'm like, I'm not afraid of, again.
Like what happened in Liverpool.
Yeah.
Like when they try to
Exactly.
squash you down, like something good came out of it.
I think they forget one thing is that the more they will try to repress something, the more it will grow.
Right.
This Palestinian thing, protest that they've been trying to squash, in the UK, they listed Palestine Action as a terrorist organization. They had to get it back. So now they lost that case. And I think it's just getting stronger and stronger because people have woken up now, Now they're like, okay, this no more of bullshit. People are, I think every parent here probably knows, right? You tell your kids, one of the first things you tell your kids is ask questions. When you're in doubt, you ask a question and you teach it. It can get very painful sometimes because they ask you back. But this is what we should be doing always, like, hey, why do you think you have a right to be in this land? They're like, 3,000, get lost from here. Like, what is the God promised me this land? Like, yeah, my God promised me Luxembourg. So does that mean all Indians should come and live here? Like, this makes no. In which school does this kind of stuff make sense anymore? So yeah.
Do you because like my origin is Korean, and Korea was colonized by Japan, and Koreans are still not over it because I lived in Korea as an adult, and that's when I found out that Koreans still harbor this like animosity towards Japan, which shocked me because I'm like, that happened, I don't know, like 100 years ago. It's time to forgive, and they're like, no, because they never apologized for the colonial past and the horrors during that time. And like, because India was colonized by England, do you feel like, for me, even though I didn't grow up in Korea, historically I feel like I owe this solidarity to be against colonial powers, even though I'm American and we are also like a bad tragedy of like stealing land. But like, do you feel this link to standing against colonizers?
Yeah, and I also stand against India. This is the thing. I think at this is the time when everybody's like just trying to be logical, ask questions. India is doing the same thing with Pakistan, with the Muslims in India. They're doing the same thing that Israel is doing in Palestine. Yeah, so the colonial stuff is still there. The UK also does not apologize. And they still have all of our stuff that they stole from India. So we just want all of it back. We're never getting it back. But through my research during this time, I found out that they stole stuff worth $55 trillion from India. We are never getting that back for sure. But the thing that is really awful is them trying to justify that they colonized you by saying that we came and did a lot of development in your country, we taught you English and stuff. Do the Japanese do that with you guys? No. No, it's a very British thing. They're like, you're speaking English right now, that's our language. I'm like, bro, have you heard my accent?
Well, that's very great. Thank you. Like, honestly, like you were saying that like doom scrolling and seeing the genocide is just really unbearable, just as a human. And so when I see something like one of your clips and it just makes me laugh off, it's like these short skits making fun of the occupation, and it feels a little bad sometimes because I feel that by laughing at it, I'm laughing with it, I'm kind of excusing what's happening, but it's really like a steam release, like because you can only handle watching so much horror that's happening. So
that's the kind of pressure I have on having to continue.
Yeah, you're like therapy for us watching a genocide.
It's my own therapy as well.
Yeah. So thank you. And now we can open the floor to any questions.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, yes, sir.
Well, it's just kind of two questions. Well, one clarification, but do you actually have criminal charges being brought against you now?
It's not yet a criminal charge. It was an initial questioning. And then the court has to decide whether they want to proceed with like a case where it's like a hate crime or I don't know. Yeah, it's
so it hasn't quite got to that.
It hasn't. Yeah, it's with the court now.
If it does, we'll do that.
Yeah, you'll hear about it because I'll make a video immediately.
The second thing I wanted to ask is you mentioned that you come from India. You never knew anything much about Palestine before October 23.
Yeah.
What's the mood in India like? I mean, it's a huge country with a huge population, but I've seen online certain outlets like Hindustan Times, which does tend to report a kind of in a sympathetic way certain things that are happening in Palestine, sympathetic towards the Palestinians. How is that? I know you're here in Luxembourg for 20 years.
I know, but I hear what's happening there.
Do you know what the score is back home?
It's pretty clear. Over the last few years, we've had a new, very nationalist government, a Hindu nationalist government. So when I grew up in India, it was a secular country, and our national anthem, the national song, all of them are about how diverse India is, how many religions, how we're all coexisting and living. That's our national anthem and national song. And now in the last few years, the Modi government is basically trying to do what Israel is doing in Palestine, to have an ethno-religious state. They're trying to have a Hindu state in India. And it is a concept like Zionism. It's called Hindutva, and that's what's going on. And so that's just the government and a few bunch of people who are really pushing this. And I know for a fact that there are a lot of Indians who do not agree with it, just like every country. I know that there are Israelis who do not agree with what their government is doing. But that's what's happening in India right now, and it's pretty bad because they are really attacking Muslims in India, and I don't know if you knew this, if you criticize the Indian government, they call you a Pakistani. They do that. It happens to me all the time. So that's how it is in India, yes. And then there are people who are fighting it as well, but we don't get to hear about it a lot. I hope it answers your question. Thank you. Anybody else? Yes.
Sorry, I have to speak French.
Yes.
Donc, une question. Blanche Gardin est une humoriste très connue en France et sa carrière s'est arrêtée du jour au lendemain parce qu'elle a soutenu la Palestine. Donc, comment vous expliquez que votre carrière n'ait pas subi le même arrêt pour la même raison?
I don't know. What is a French comedian called? Blanc. Like a white garden? Kind of. Okay. Okay. Well, I don't know what she said. Because that would be my first question, is to check what she actually said. Because there is there's a very, very strong line. Some people think it's a very thin line between being anti-Semitic and anti-Zionist. They say it's the same thing. That's the problem. So you have to be very careful what you say at a show, in public, and on a video, everything. So if you are anti-Semitic, it will probably get you into trouble. So you have to be very careful what you're saying. It is your responsibility when you're trying to put your voice out there to be clear about exactly what you're trying to do and to say. So I don't know about her. For me, I am very careful about what I'm doing. Not careful about saying other shit to other people, which I do all the time. But for me, it's working out. I do have pushback, like this was going to get cancelled today, but otherwise it's going pretty okay. I think you have to be careful about what you say.
Je dois juste dire, Blanche Gardin n'a pas eu de propos antisémites.
Okay.
Elle a juste dénoncé les atteintes aux droits humains, dénoncé le génocide, dénoncé tout ce qui se passait en Palestine, mais elle n'a jamais été antisémite. Et malgré tout, tous ses contrats ont été annulés. C'est une femme qui faisait non seulement du stand-up, mais qui tournait aussi dans des films, qui faisait beaucoup de choses, et elle a dit du jour au lendemain, c'était fini.
Yeah, it is pretty sad because it's in France, right? Yeah, France is very much like it's pretty bad right now. You can't say anything. You can't wear a keffiyeh. You can't wear a hijab. Nothing. So I think that at some point it'll get to a stage where people will fight back. That's all we can hope for, I think, at this point. Thank you very much.
So I guess as a comedian, you better, do you improvise or do you prepare in advance?
I do both. So it's a good mix. 90% is prepared and 10% is improvised.
I'm asking because it's in general, because sometimes because of lack of knowledge or just because of hearing it randomly in society, maybe a current trending topic or whatever, you might express an opinion, not even an opinion, just a statement in a misplaced way, and then you could end up with a result like be heard because of lack of information.
So usually in comedy shows, that's what happens. You will end up saying some stuff that you didn't plan, and it can get you into trouble. That's why most comedy shows, they don't allow people to film what you're saying, because it's supposed to be not a public statement. It's supposed to be a closed room with people who paid to watch you. So that's why, like all the big shows that you go to, they will not allow you to film anything at all, because it's supposed to be between us, not for public consumption. Any more questions? Anybody has anything else you want to ask? Yes.
I mean, maybe it's a bit too political or something, but...
Too political?
I'm in finance and stuff, and I'm interested in those things. Because you mentioned about the banking system.
Yes.
And lately we talk about Europe getting a bit more independent from the US.
That would be great news.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think about it? Have you heard about it, about the digital euro and stuff like this?
I'm not a big fan of the digital euro. Yeah, he's saying that the EU is trying to become more independent from the US in the financial sector, which would be great if the Europeans did not have to follow the US sanctions regime, and they could simply be like, this our court, the biggest court in Europe has said that you guys are criminals, and that would be it. I heard a quote from Xavier Bettel saying that he does not have any appetite to stand up against the US influence on Europe in terms of the financial sector. The digitalization of the euro, I am not a big fan of that, because digital money is a great way for people to control everything around what you're doing. Your bank can be closed at an instant. So they can control what you can buy, what you cannot buy, where you can spend money and stuff. So not a big fan of the digital part, but it would be great to have an alternative system to the SWIFT and controlled by the rest of the world, or by everybody together, not just by one country. So hopefully they will work together and get there, but I didn't get any confidence from listening to Xavier Bettel about it. So
just want to ask you a question. Since you're working at a bank before, did you feel any pressure from colleagues or anything who must have seen some of your skits? Was it positive?
All positive. This is the crazy thing, because you hear all of this pressure, this online controversy, everything is fake. Like those 3,000 emails to the Comedy Store, all from India. It's all fake, because nobody comes to my, last year I did 100 shows. Nobody came to my show to harass me about anything. I thought my shows would be like burnt or something, you know. Nothing happened. Nobody comes, because it's all fake online stuff. In my office, I found out people were like, dude, you're doing amazing stuff. I don't know how you still have a job, but you're doing amazing. They kept doing this for the last 2 years, every single time. And they were like, nobody has said anything to you from the management? Nobody said anything at all, not a single word. Oh, it's all right. No, they were following me. Because the HR told me that they were following every single thing I was doing. Because they were tracking where I was going to do shows. They were like, oh, you were in Madrid on Friday, you did not apply for a day off. Which was my fault. All right.
Well, great. Yeah.
Sorry, I actually came quite late, so you might have covered this already. But I actually first discovered you through Instagram.
Yes.
I had no idea you're based here, actually. I was so shocked.
I did cover that.
Do you find that there's a lot of censorship going on, like post, for example, Larry Ellison buying?
Oh, 100%.
So do you see your posts, or
Yes.
do you get like flagged quite a bit? And do you also, sorry, and just two-part, do you find that there's a censorship that you face here in Luxembourg, not necessarily through social media, but other means? Do you find that there's also some form of censorship here?
No. So, two parts, right? So the first part is, what was the first part again?
Censorship on your material?
Yeah, so initially I used to get some of my videos blocked or flagged for community violations, because I used to make fun of people. I would just call somebody stupid, and they'd be like, you can't call anybody stupid online, you know. You can say they are not stupid, you know, be sarcastic or something like that. Yes. He also controls the world, so. So the way that they censor you right now is by through the algorithm. So sometimes I'll post a video where I will clearly say Israel or Trump or something. I can see, even though I have 300,000 followers on TikTok, only 300 people have seen it. Because they will not feed it onto everybody's For You page. I post a video about a dog or something, immediately it'll go up to like a million views, you know. So they will block you by throttling your views. So when I can see all of these now. I know exactly what to say, what not to say. I know which video will do well on Instagram, which one will not do well on TikTok. So that's the way they control it now, by just not showing your videos to anybody. And in Luxembourg, I have not had any censorship at all. Today was the first. And it did not work, because we have amazing people here from the Clay. Please make some noise for them. So yeah, no. I've been doing shows all over Luxembourg and all over the country. There has been no issue so far.
Do you consider yourself an activist now? Like through your comedy, you are inadvertently.
I think other people consider me to be an activist. I find it a little bit. I feel like I'm under pressure to be an activist. But I try to make it clear that I'm a comedian and that I will make fun of you even if you like me. So it's a thing I have, yes. So I think I'm trying to be like an activist, but still make sure that I am a comedian first.
Is there any more questions?
Actually, I was wondering, do you play the US alone, or do you plan to do it, or do you think you can get in if you play there?
Well, this is one of those parts where there's a negative aspect to what I'm doing. My mother was in the US, and last month she was hospitalized critically, and I couldn't go to the US. So I applied first for the ESTA, it got rejected. I did it like 3 times, and third time by some miracle it got approved. And then I was very scared because I was like, even if they approve me, they can still stop me at the border and then send me to El Salvador or wherever they feel like it. So yeah, it is. I haven't been to the US for any shows, but I hope to. I think that Donald Trump will kick the bucket at some point. We can only hope. So I hope to go there. Thank you. Thanks for that.